Wonder if I'll ever get tired of being wrong.
So when the Daytona 660 was initially released, I said this. Which, okay, it's nice that it's got more power, but this thing's gonna cost $9,200, and honestly, instead of getting this, I would just spend a little bit more money and go get the RS660, or save some cash and just get the R7. People got big mad, saying that I was a total bonehead who didn't know snakes from dildos about anything. But hear me out. During my time with Yami Noob, I was repeatedly mansplained the glory of the Daytona 675R because Yam is a huge fan or cult member depending on who you talk to. The thing is he's not wrong. The 675R is a badass motorcycle. It can trace its lineage all the way back to the TT600 from 2000. It was a bike that was directly aimed at the American 600cc market, which was ruled by the Big Four. People were going wild for sport bikes back then because cash was cheap and you could have a 400 credit score and ride out with a brand new Fireblade in like 5 minutes. Seriously, people were spending money like it was going out of style back then, and if you fell into a coma in 2007, the party never ended. The thing is, going after the Big Four is tough, especially when you haven't made an inline 4 before, so even though the bike made 108 horsepower and 50 foot-pounds of torque, and the magazines loved its upright riding position and agile handling, it was hampered by bad throttle response and terrible fueling. It was their first fuel-injected bike, and they did fix it for the 2001 model year, but the damage was done. In 2002, Triumph took the lessons they learned from the TT and then dug through the back catalog for a nameplate they could parade around like it was Weekend at Bernie's. That's how they came to call the Daytona the Daytona. They had a prototype from 1983 that they can point back to, and it looked like a Bonneville, because of course it did. So they did a face-off and cut the TT up to make it look sportier and got it to make 110 horsepower and 50 foot-pounds of torque. Then they cheated, bumping the bike up to 650 cc's, but they only managed to find 4 extra ponies. While all this 600cc chicanery was happening, the Daytona 955i was busy throwing down against Japanese leader bikes of the day. It made 147 horsepower and 74 foot-pounds of torque out of its triple. The triple stood out among the crowd of samey inline 4 engine notes, so Triumph decided to smash both the 955i and the Daytona 650 together and came out with the Daytona 675. The Gen 1 had a 675cc triple putting down 126 horsepower and 54 foot-pounds of torque. Compared to the other cheater 600 of the time, the 636, it was a little bit slower, but it had more torque and it was available a lot sooner. Problem is, because the Brits say earth instead of ground, it was plagued by electrical issues until the 675R came out in 2011. That bike had Öhlins, a quick shifter, a little less power, but what people really know it for is the intake howl. It's one of the most iconic sounds to ever pierce the ears of riders. Seriously, it's loud enough to cause hearing damage. It also felt like you were riding a sawhorse. The ergonomics of the bike are just plain old painful. Every single riding experience I've had on a Daytona has been deeply unpleasant because it felt like I was sitting on top of the front tire. The bike was dropped in 2017, then kinda brought back in the form of the Daytona Moto 2 765, which was basically a rotted out street triple 765 that had carbon fiber bodywork and clip-ons. Now they're back at it with the Daytona 660, which is allegedly the new version, and if I squint, I can kinda see it maybe. It's packing their new 660 triple that you can see in bikes like the Tiger and the Trident 660s, and here it's putting down 95 horsepower and 51 foot-pounds of torque. They're boasting a more street-focused ergonomic setup, which right there calls into question whether or not this really is a Daytona at heart. I mean, if you don't want to die after 15 minutes of riding because your back isn't on fire, is it really a Daytona? We're gonna have to hit the road to find out, but you can't test a sport bike like this on just any old road. You need proper twisties, and Kalimoto has you covered. They're the best riding app out there because you can plan a route in seconds, and thanks to their probably patent-pending Twisty Road rating system, you can select the twistiest options for your ride. You can save your route and share it with your buddies, or export it to use elsewhere if you want. It's the only riding app I use because, unlike one owned by a certain gear company whose name rhymes with Godzilla, it doesn't result in me getting lost at literally every turn. Check out everything Kalimoto has to offer and get 10% off a yearly subscription with the code SPITE10.
Now, I know a lot of you guys are looking at the gear that I'm wearing right now, and they're like, what the hell is going on with this dude? I'm wearing a vest over top of my Tech Air off-road because it is currently 104 degrees outside right now. So cut me some slack. I'm still trying to be safe. but also not trying to roast my melon. Now, I want to start this out by giving you a little bit of background of my experience with the Daytona platform, because I have a unique piece of history with this motorcycle, given my workplace experience, shall we say. So, I have ridden a Daytona 765 that has been fully track prepped once. Yami let me take that thing for a quick little spin, and man, that thing was ratty, but it was fun. It was really fun. I mean, what do you expect from a fully prepped track bike, right? Then I rode the Moto 2 carbon fibered out Daytona 765. That one was kind of interesting. It was really small and really svelte. It felt smaller than this is. Very interesting experience and very, very, very uncomfortable. I could never get comfy with that bike. The Daytona as a platform has always had some of the stupidly aggressivest ergonomics in the motorcycling industry. You think, oh, you know, it can't be that bad. It's just a 600 style motorcycle, right? No, it is that bad. Daytona people, if you're down there, tell me if I'm crazy or not, but that motorcycle feels like it is the most aggressive out of the factory possible. And this thing is not. It is very much not. You can tell that it's taking aim right at the Honda CB650, because the ergonomics are very upright, very street focused, but it's not sacrificing anything, really. It doesn't feel that way to me anyway. Around a corner, it's so light and so flickable. You can just get around a corner nice and easy and then power out. Dip into a corner, carry the brakes past tip in, roll out. This bike is ludicrously confidence inspiring. I honest to God, I don't think I've gotten on a sport bike and gelled with it this fast. There's always a learning curve when you get on a motorcycle for the first time. But this thing, inside of like 2 or 3 corners, I was like, okay, I get it. You know, it's so ready to be ridden quickly. And despite that fact, it's still really comfortable. And I think the relaxed ergonomics actually do this bike more favors, because if you're a newer rider, which this bike is probably aimed at, getting into that aggressive tuck, it feels weird, especially when you're going around a corner and you're not going super fast. You're not using that bike the way it was designed to be used, and so you end up fighting it. But because this is more relaxed, you can move around. You can ride it just a little bit quicker because you're not craning your neck up to see. You know, it's easy. It's very easy. Now let's talk a little bit about the power. The power delivery is interesting on this bike. It doesn't feel like there's a ton of power to search for at the top. It feels like after 9 or 10,000 RPM, it's kind of done. It's kind of like, yeah, I'm good. It's time to shift. Right between 6, 7, and 8,000 RPM, though, it is so lovely. It's the perfect little meaty power band for you to just dig into. You know, there's just a solid amount of torque right there ready for you. In that sense, it feels a lot more like a V-twin than an inline 4, and I love that. I really, really, really love that. It feels so good. Paired with that is a great set of brakes. The brakes on this feel very nice. They're not big branded Brembos or anything like that. They're just unbranded calipers, and yet they're paired very nicely with the weight and the power. The bike just slows way down. You know, it almost feels like it's ready to do an endo. The suspension, while not adjustable, feels nice. It's worth pointing out that for somebody like me, I'm pushing the limits of most factory suspensions, so for this to feel as composed as it does, with a rider of my size, I'm 240 pounds, well, 237.8 this morning on the scale. For this bike to still feel that planted, very good. Very, very good.
Now that was all some pretty good stuff out there on the road, but I do want to talk about some cons that I've noticed with this thing as I've been riding it around. First and foremost, This is a very buzzy motorcycle. The handlebars are like mommy's best friend right here. The pegs aren't bad, the seat is not bad, but my God, the handlebars buzz like nobody's business. I have a feeling that's just inherent to the bike. There's not really a lot you could do here because of the way that the handlebars are set up. Maybe you could put some bushings between where the clip-ons meet the handlebars, but other than that, you're kind of just stuck with it. Another thing you are stuck with on this motorcycle are the looks. Now, I don't dislike the way that this bike looks. However, I do think it looks like the Daytona 765 or 675 you have at home. It looks like, this is gonna sound terrible, but I'm gonna say it anyway, it looks like the made in China version of a Daytona 675. I know some people are gonna be like, well, this bike is its own thing. Stop comparing it to the Daytona 675. Well, it's Triumph's own fault that I'm doing it. They are so stuck in with their heritage that I have to look back at the other models in the lineup, and this one just doesn't look as good to me. I mean, looks are very subjective. I could totally see somebody liking this. The white, this is the base model right here. This thing is $9,200. It's another like $200 to get a colorway. This is the base model colorway. The white has such a nice pearl flake to it. It is a very, very good looking paint job for a base colorway. I just don't like the shape of the front end. The front end just looks kind of like a Honda Civic. Now, you did hear me say the price was $9,200. It's a little bit under that, but I'm gonna round up because it's easier to say $9,200 than $9,195. So this bike is very affordable, but there are some things on here that are missing probably to make it feel more affordable. First and foremost, quick shifter. There is no quick shifter on here. It is a $300 upgrade plus $40 for the fitting kit. So you're looking at about $340 plus tax and shipping and all that stuff. And I don't know if you need to go to a dealership to get it turned on. Another thing that's on here is a ride-by-wire throttle. And if you know me, you know where this is going. This ride-by-wire throttle feels like it's right off of a street triple. In fact, I bet you they're using some economy of scale so that this is literally the exact same unit, which means it has the roll forward to kill for cruise control. I was looking online, it doesn't seem like cruise control is an option for this thing. I kind of would like to see that as an optional addition. I could see the quick shifter being on here from the factory and then an optional cruise control, because this is comfortable enough to ride all day long, which leads me into the ergonomics on this thing. Surprisingly, this bike actually fits me. I'm not used to getting on a sport bike and having it fit. There is a little bit of bullying my leg for space here, but if this were my bike, I would just take the foot pegs off because they're not acting like an exhaust hanger. So the passenger pegs would be off, and once that happens, I've got all the room that I need. The seating position is really nice and comfortable. The bars are nice and high. They're not like down here like they used to be on the old Daytona. And along with that is a bike that weighs apparently 433 pounds, wet and ready to ride, but this thing does not feel like a 433 pound motorcycle. It honestly feels sub 400. It carries its weight really, really, really well. Ergonomically, we do have one sore spot though. There is no adjustability in the handlebars. What I would have liked to have seen here, this probably would have added a little bit more expense, is a triple tree top clamp and then some actual clip-ons that you could rotate around, something where you could actually get your desired fitting, because for me, this like aggressive angle here, I'd like to see that about there. I like my handlebars nice and wide. It just feels like I get a little bit more leverage. Another thing that just, oh my God, they fixed this for the Rocket 3, but it's a problem here. So, all right, we're gonna turn it on. I'm gonna have the kickstand up. I'm gonna have it in neutral and no clutch. Let me start it in neutral without pulling in the clutch. That dumb Triumph, because now, if I'm at the track wanting to let my bike warm up, I gotta do all this shenanigans. Just let me start the thing on the kickstand without yanking in the clutch. It's fine, not gonna go anywhere.
Now, how does all that translate onto the highway? Okay. It honestly, it rides like a naked bike with fairings. Like, it's comfortable enough that I can do, you know, an hour just cruising down the highway. I really wish it had cruise control though. Again, I get that it doesn't have it for sake of price, but at least give it to me as an option so that I can put it on, so that I can just have cruise control going right now. I mean, I know you can get a cruise control unit for like 10 bucks. It's just a throttle lock, but I don't know, I'd rather have it because we've got the buttons here. I'm sure that you could reprogram some of these buttons where if you hold it down and then use up and down while the cruise is on, it's the set and reset. I know that smart people could figure it out. It would just make this a little bit nicer because the ergonomics are comfortable enough that I'm not worried. The wind is hitting me square in the eyeballs. I'm sure you're hearing it. It's not great where the wind is getting put on me. If I were to duck way down, it's still not much better. It is worth mentioning that buzz again because, man alive, now that we're just cruising here in 6th gear, it's very, very buzzy. And that's causing me to hold the grips wrong. If you look, I'm actually entirely squozen onto the rubber. Normally I like to be out here in the screwdriver grip, but these weights on the end of the handlebars, they just buzz like nobody's business. So in the interest of retaining feeling in my fingers, I grab the grips like I'm not supposed to. So again, there's not really anything you can do about it. And to be honest, a 600, like a normal 600, isn't going to be any less buzzy, and it's going to be way more uncomfortable, which brings me to my next point. Now that we're back in the twisties, I wanted to say something that I know is going to make people very upset, but I'm going to say it anyway because I don't care. And I can say it because I own a 600. So, 600 boys, grab your crying teddy bear because I'm about to hurt your feelings. The era of the 600 is over. They're pointless. They're completely pointless now. I know some people are going to be like, oh, well, you're on a 600 F4i. That ain't a real 600 because it's only got the single fuel rail. Yeah, I mean, it revs out to 14,000 RPM. It's a 600. They're just not as practical of a sport bike as something like this is. And I know a lot of guys are like, well, I bought a 600 I bought a 600 because it isn't practical. Yeah, I mean, motorcycles in general aren't practical, but unless you really, really, really love that inline 4 soundtrack, or you really like keeping your motorcycle on the boil 100% of the time, they're just not as fun as something like this is. They're a lot more serious of a motorcycle, you know? They demand a lot more out of you to ride them correctly. You have to ride them on their terms. Something like this, yeah, if you ride it on its terms, you're going real fast because it's a very capable motorcycle. I'm not asking myself the question, why am I here? Why aren't I on a racetrack? Because this thing can have as much fun on the street as it can on a racetrack. And then I'm sure there's a contingent of y'all, if you're 600 people watching this, that are saying, well, okay, sure, but I have my 600 so I can do hood rat stuff with my friends. Because I get it. I totally get it. They're a very hood rat style motorcycle. Totally get it. I have done some questionable things on Mexican highways on my 600. 100%. So I know it's going to make some people upset. I know people love and adore the 600 platform, but it is well and truly a dinosaur at this point. There's no point to keeping one around, especially if you can afford to grab a new one, right? A new 660 like this. So let's brass tacks this bad boy here for you. If you are looking for a new sport bike and you're debating between this and like a Japanese 600, just get this. Get this. I know you're like, oh, but the reliability can't be Japanese reliability. Trust me, I have seen Yami do horrendous things to his Daytona, and he will admit it. If he's watching this, you will admit it, Yam. You have done some horrible things to that Daytona of yours. But it just kept on going. Like, he'd start it up and it would sound horrible, but it would wake up every time. and he would take it straight to redline for 20 minutes and then turn it off, and then do it again, and then do it again, and then do it again. So reliability is not a concern to me. What is a concern to me is fun factor, and this is way more fun than a regular old 600 is. I'm just gonna say it. So if you're looking for a new bike, and you're looking for a new sport bike specifically, check this thing out. Is this better than the Aprilias? Nah, I don't know. I'd need to ride them back to back, but this is a very good contender, and I'm actually kind of happy that I was wrong about it. With that being said, guys, I'll catch you in the next one. If you want to see my initial first impressions, you can. There's a video available on the channel exclusively for channel members and Patreon members. Information will be down in the description. Otherwise, I'll catch you in the next one. See you later.